I would start Finn Smith. I think he's been outstanding for Northampton this season and has shown a maturity and a level of game management that I think is not necessarily shared by Marcus Smith, although he has hugely improved in that regard as well. I mean, you look at some of his performances for Quins just before Christmas, and he was absolutely outstanding. But I think back to Finn Smith for Northampton at Thomond Park against Munster in the driving rain, 14 players. I mean, that's as near to sort of test conditions as you're going to get. Backs against the wall, and he marched them around the park. It was O'Gara-esque on the same field, really. It really, really was. And regardless of his dual qualification status, I think I would be really, really tempted to hand him the keys. I know it's a risk because he'd be debutant away in Rome on the opening weekend.
Quite un-Borthwick-like to take a risk like that.
Quite. It is un-Borthwick-like, but it's also pretty Borthwick-like to back who you think is the best player and not sort of take much account of the unmeasurable, intangible qualities. He would see how well Finn Smith played in that Munster game, and not just in that Munster game. There's other games, but just using that one as an example because I think that's as close as it's been to test rugby. He will have seen that and gone, this guy's really got something here. Does he have something that Marcus Smith doesn't have? Perhaps, but Marcus Smith also has things that his namesake Finn doesn't have. I think I'd start with Marcus on the bench, let him run riot. When it breaks up a bit and when it's quite cagey at the start, Italy will be really up for it. And when it's quite cagey and a little bit more tit for tat at the start, I think I'd have Finn Smith there just to sort of lead the way and offer greater direction. And also, there's with so many backline injuries at the minute, there's that Northampton continuity that we've spoken about as well. Alex Mitchell will be presumably starting at scrum half. There's a good chance that Fraser Dingwall will be involved in the midfield. There's a really good chance that Tommy Freeman will be in the back three, and George Furbank could start at 15 over Freddie Stewart. There's a real Northampton flavour to the backline selection, and I think that continuity and regularity as well will be, could be very, very important, could be decisive.
Charlie, was that a mini celebration for George Furbank or for Tommy Freeman?
That feels really harsh.
I saw it out the corner of my eye.
That seems really harsh on Freddie Stewart, but I just think George Furbank has been the glue as well as the inspiration for a lot that has gone right for Northampton Saints. He's been their captain in lieu of Lewis Ludlam, who's been injured. He's looked brilliant. He's been everything that we thought that we knew he was capable of, i.e. a playmaker with real poise and someone who hits the line from fullback quite incisively. But he's also added a bit. I did a feature on Northampton Saints putting on a bit of weight as a collective, as a squad, and he's only put on 2 or 3 kilos, he told me, but he'd felt real gains in his strength work in the gym, and I think that's really coming through in that game that you were at, Charles.
But has he also got quicker as well with that?
Yeah, no, they were really. If you want to check that feature out on the website, there's sort of, it really comes through that they knew that they wanted to put on weight, but also didn't want to lose their USP, which is that fast flowing style that we've become accustomed to. Furbank, that's you talk about Steve Borthwick kind of being pragmatic in that he will back form players. I think he will be really wary of how well that Saints contingent has gone as a collective, and I think Furbank has just been really important to that. Is looking like, as Charles said, Dingwall is the rookie he will be in almost by default because of the number of injuries and unavailability in midfield. Again, that's not to denigrate how well Dingwall's been playing. He's a super clever player, versatile, switches in and around 12 and 13 with Rory Hutchinson for Saints. And he's been in and around the England setup for ages, despite being a fairly young guy still. So, if Dingwall's going to be there, if Freeman's going to be there, if Alex Mitchell's going to be there, I think Furbank being there is quite a sensible choice as well.
In an almost perverse twist of fate, I think that Furbank is almost a victim of the injury situation, because I think if it was Manu and Ollie Lawrence at 12 and 13, with everybody fit and firing starting, then he might have looked at Furbank at 15 owing to that extra distribution, because obviously he's played fly half, he's much better distributor, much more of a ball player than Freddie Stewart, but he's probably really going to have to pick Henry Slade in the midfield, because there aren't really much other options. So therefore, you've got your distributor, you've got a ball player, so you can get away with Freddie Stewart at 15, can't you?
For another year, I find Freddie Stewart just a really fascinating piece of this England side, because we know his super strength is fantastic, probably unrivaled apart from Hugo Keenan as far as taking high balls and being commanding in that area. However, I'm not sure how much he's kicked on as that link man, and probably has a little bit at Leicester. You want more to just bring more out of the back line that they've got, and Furbank certainly does that. What I would say is, although Borthwick is super fond of Freddie Stewart, and he's, Freddie Stewart helped him to win a Premiership title, which has been a turning point of his whole career, Steve Borthwick. He also didn't pick him for the World Cup quarter-final. He went for Marcus Smith on the bench because he felt that England needed that little bit more help moving the ball wide, didn't he? So, yeah, there are amazingly intriguing selection quandaries all around this England side, and 15 is just another one of them.
It's quite fun, isn't it? Especially the Furbank story. I love a kind of mini redemption story, and given his last two appearances were starting at fly half against Tonga and then being chucked into the side at the end of that 2022 Six Nations, and they were like, "Oh, do you want to play fullback?" when he hadn't played the whole championship. I think it'd be great to see him involved. It's a funny tournament in terms of England seem to have a lot of uncapped players who are eligible for other teams, and normally you get one or two, but there's kind of three with Finn Smith and Dingwall and Faye Weboso on the wing. The cynical part of me wonders whether against Italy they just try and cap all of them, just because then that risk sort of goes away, especially Dingwall with the form that he's been in. I don't know how close he was to being called up by Scotland, and Rory Hutchinson's obviously gone back there, his Northampton teammate. And it's going to be interesting with Faye Weboso in particular, because that caused a bit of a stir. Charlie, can you see him starting in Rome?
It's a difficult one. What I would say is two things. One, that Steve Borthwick volunteered him explicitly when he didn't have to, as a player who'd impressed him in the Premiership. There were three players that came out of his mouth first of all, which took everybody pretty much in the media room by surprise, because this chatter about whether Faye Weboso would choose England or Wales felt a bit premature, regardless of how he was playing in the Premiership. But he brought up Faye Weboso, brought up Ethan Roots, and he brought up Greg Fislau. Now, Greg Fislau hasn't made the wider squad. Ethan Roots has, and Ethan Roots has got a lot of praise from Steve Borthwick since then. With Faye Weboso, the second thing I'd say, the first thing is that Steve Borthwick seems to have tracked him for a long time, and seems to have been really proactive in how he's contacted him and got him now ahead of Warren Gatland. The second thing is that he is playing in a really aggressive out-to-win blitz system with ex-Chiefs. That would seem to me to fit what we suppose Felix Jones will bring in as defence coach. And as well as that, he's very proactive when his side has the ball, picking up touches around the ruck. Will Greenwood compared him to Sevu Reece, the All Blacks winger. He's even got a bit of a touch of the Mark Tallayers about him, which is a huge shout, because Mark Talayer was one of the standout players of the World Cup final. But there are, as ever, reasons why Steve Borthwick has picked a player, and I'm totally sitting on the fence as to whether I think he'll play. There's a slot there at right wing with Johnny May's retirement, and he suits it.